All right, hi everyone, and welcome to the panel on the art of lighting. I am Daniel Gomanares. I'm the resident pro here at Aputure Lighting, and joining me today are world-famous gaffers John Roche, Andrew Lock, and Luke Seerveld. Guys, welcome. Let's get a big round of applause for these guys. So gaffers, even more so than cinematographers, have to balance a very technical set of knowledge, whether it's electrical loads, the capabilities of a light, with the creative needs of a set and the creative needs of the DP. So I want to kick us off with a little bit of an orthodox question, and that is, are you ever worried about becoming stagnant, like repeating the same lighting setup or kind of letting it become routine or rote? Has that ever happened to you in the past, and how have you dealt with this?
I think these days, if you're paying attention to social media, if you're paying attention to technology advances in lighting and now even in grip, if you're not paying attention, if you're stagnating, you're not paying attention.
It's increasingly hard to stay stagnant now because the technology is changing. The technology is changing so much, so it's increasingly hard to stay stagnant. It's almost impossible. Because now you can just press a button and change a color. So also I think social media is forcing us to not be stagnant because you can just click on another link and see someone else's project, and other work drives you to be better. So you can fall into a pattern if you're not careful, and just treat every job like it's its own job. Don't look at everybody that you're lighting. If you're doing corporate stuff, for example, they've all got different hair, they've all got different shaped noses. Try and figure out what to do for that person to make them look the best they possibly can, and you won't get stagnant. Just something simple as that.
I think that's a wonderful answer. So, I think another challenge that you guys face as gaffers is the creative choices are entirely dependent on other people. Not necessarily entirely, but you are at the mercy of the cinematographer who you are serving, and, the director, and in a corporate interview, perhaps the corporate overlords that are, ultimately making the decisions on the project. So, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you handle that relationship with your cinematographers? How do you handle a cinematographer that's not collaborative?
Well, that's a big question.
We have time.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when it all depends. Do you have an established working relationship with it? A new DP comes to me, first job, I'm just listening, because you got to figure out how this guy or this woman likes to light. So I'm just listening. And as you go on, you start to build that trust, and then you got your vocabulary together. And I find very much different than 20 years ago. DPs are now coming in, they can't keep up with lighting. They can barely keep up with camera. So they are much more likely to come to me with a lookbook, with visual ideas, with concepts, not with, I need an Area 60 or I need an Aputure, blah, 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 or a Danlux, whatever. They don't, not that they don't care, but it's too much. And so it's much easier just to talk about look. And to me, that's a relief. And then it leads us into a very collaborative, discussion. And just, tell me the heads, tell me the kind of heads, type of lights, blah, blah, blah.
Do you think that's a little bit because of how technology is advanced at the LED?
100%. They can't keep up. We can't keep up. Our heads are like, it's like crazy. We're buying lights today and I'm selling it to get the next bet. It's hard to keep up. But the basic concepts, soft light, hard light, now we have reflected light, those, we have the tool. We know our sort of tools, so it's easy to talk a conversation about, we need a bounce light, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to answer that question. I think if we, closer. If usually I'm too loud. Because we tend not to work on larger form stuff where people might be more prescriptive, telling us, these are the things. And then we're also owner-operators, so we own our lights, not like we can sub-rent, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, to John's point, because things are moving so quickly, we're being looked to for, and often because they know that we're quote-unquote influencers or whatever, that we're going to have lots of new toys. So they want to see those new toys, you know, and obviously you want to use them in the work of the story, but that's part of the thing that keeps you rejuvenated too, is trying the same thing with different tools. And sometimes I do that just for fun to keep my interest up, is to try a completely different way of doing it to get the same result. No.
In terms of collaborating, there's no rule that says we have to agree on everything. That's this, you know. It took me a long time to figure something out. When I figured this thing out, my business took off. I realized I have one job and one job only on the set, and that's to make the cinematographer look good. That's my one job as a gaffer. And when I realized that, business just exploded. And do I see eye to eye with the cinematographer on how to light stuff? Not every job. But at the end of the day, you know, they're the ones who get the Academy Award. There's no Academy Award for lighting, but the flip side to that is, if the lighting looks like shit, we're not the ones who are getting hanged. You know, it's the cinematographer. He's the head of department at the end of the day. And when you're young and you're starting out, you really care about your work and you want everything you do to look great. Sometimes you have to let go and just go with what the cinematographer wants. But having said that, having one job, which is to make the cinematographer look good, sometimes you get that cinematographer that just doesn't let you do that. And that's when things become incredibly hard. They don't understand what the tool does. They're doing the wrong things all the time. I don't know if that's inexperience. Sometimes with people, they're trying to shoot their show reel. In that situation, I will discreetly have my best boy, if I've got one, my best electrics, setting up a plan B, so that when plan A doesn't work, we can swing over to plan B. We do this quietly, because at the end of the day, my job is to make the cinematographer look good. If I don't agree with my cinematographer, I do not say it on set. I never have an argument with them on set. That reflects badly on them, reflects badly on me. If I've got a scenario where the collaboration's just completely fallen apart, because good lighting can look bad if the exposure's set wrong. You know, in that sort of scenario, I'll sneakily do something like I'll send photos off to the production company, BTS, and say, hey, look, here are some photos that I took on set. Feel free to use them on your social media or anything like that. They see those photos and they can see the lighting looks better in the photos than it does in the delivery that they got. They know I wasn't the issue. But never chuck your cinematographer under the bus, because it'll finish your career real quick.
That was pretty great. Go ahead, Luke.
I think it's important, you know, in a subtle way to make sure that the people in charge believe everything is their idea. And so, you know, sometimes that takes some work, but yeah, and you know, water off a duck's back. You know, if today isn't going to be the day you get to make it perfect, fine, you've got a job tomorrow, you know. So, but I think working with people and making everybody feel like they're part of it is the important thing. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to go down the line here. We'll start with John. I want to hear, where do you find inspiration? Are there any specific places, art pieces, artists, locations that you go to be inspired? More movies?
You know, this is honest truth. A lot of my inspiration comes from my colleagues. I mean, these guys, I talk to these guys almost every day. Almost every day we're texting back and forth. And, you know, that is, you know, watching, you know, sometimes you get stuck in your little bubble. You know, you're going out to set with the same guys. So I love to occasionally jump on another gaffer's job. And it's amazing. You know, I was on my buddy Vinny's job the other day, and I'm like, wait a minute, you know, and suddenly I see this whole thing he's doing. I would have never thought of that. You know, I've been using this stuff for 20 years, and it just never would have crossed my mind. So I really find a tremendous amount of inspiration from fellow gaffers and from DPs. You know, you get on a job with a new DP, and that's part of that, collaborative process. And that's what really inspires me, just in terms of in the working inspiration.
That was great. Andrew, go ahead.
Is where I find inspiration for lighting or how I'm going to light stuff, life. Like if I might be sitting in a restaurant or something and the sun's coming in beautifully and lighting the person, 2 stalls down, what's it bouncing off? How can I replicate that? How can I make that look that way? I don't necessarily try and get inspiration from looking at other people's pictures, because you can go crazy trying to figure out how they did it. But I find if every now and then I'll just be somewhere and just the lighting will just look naturally amazing, and then I'd try and take inspiration from that, try and make stuff look like that. As the most beautiful thing you can create without making it look lit. That's where I find inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all those things. From nature, obviously, from history. I remember, wanting to get into film because of Mad Max movies, and I wanted to go to Australia. I thought that's the frontier. That's where I want to go. Then, I slowly matured, and got into philosophy, and so then documentaries, were more interesting, and so I like documentaries that think they aren't documentaries, where they sort of bring in narrative aspects, and just watching people push the envelope is exciting. And I mean, my wife and I love watching, just sitting on the couch watching narrative, TV shows, and like we were just watching Hacks, and love that show. Now, am I going to bring that stuff into my work? Probably not, but I think just having it, having the art around you seeps into your work too. Just what you enjoy watching, I think, ends up in your own work, because that's the water you're swimming in.
Oh, those are great answers right there. All right, so do you think you're a better artist today than you were 10 years ago? And how have you grown? What advice would you give to you 10 years ago? Let's put it down.
Buy Bitcoin. I think I'm way more creative than I was 10 years ago, and I put that down to the technology. Because you can be brave now, you can show something and then go, oh, that looks crap, press a button, and it's forgotten about. Whereas in the past, we had to buy gels, you had to cut them, put them on the lights. Making a creative decision, you couldn't do it impulsively, and you couldn't do little tweaks on the fly like we can do now. So I think that the technology's made what I make way more creative. And I look at work I worked on 10 years ago, it feels very chromophobic. There's next to no color anywhere. Color was like warmer or cooler, because I had like 18 gels, colored gels, theatrical gels in my gels kit, and that was a lot compared to what a lot of other corporate gaffers were carrying. And now I look back and think, I couldn't survive with 18 colors now. There is no way I could light a set with just an 18 color palette. But in terms of, am I better at my craft? You never stop learning. You never stop. And the reason you'll never stop is the people around you you'll learn off them. It's anyone that says that they're self-taught, they're not. They've learned off everybody they're around. But you'll just, experience takes time. And the thing to remember when you're starting out, you're going to make mistakes, and that's what short films are for, and music clips and things like that. And just when you get those crazy projects, just be brave and take it easy on the ones that you're getting paid for. But I'll wait. You'll be a way better at your craft in 10 years' time than you are now. Just trust that it'll happen.
Yeah, I think, we have so many more brushes for our painting, and that doesn't necessarily make you a better artist automatically, but we also come from the days when we had nothing, so it's like we started with nothing and now we have everything, and I think so you appreciate what you have, and I just, now we're the old guys on the set. So there's a nice thing about that, too, when you're working with young people that have, ideas that you didn't think possible before, because, and now they are. And now you can be part of that, and you can bring your experience to it. It's a wonderful world to be in, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think the single biggest thing I learned was this idea of continual improvement. If you start thinking about every day you go to set, how can I do this better? What's not working right here? What do I have to fix on the cart so the sandbags don't roll off? Or, if you just start you break apart the minutia of what you do every day, and you try to improve it, and in conjunction with your colleagues and in conjunction with the DP. Like, if you've got that idea, like, every day I want to get a little bit better, that's a game changer. Like, we all go through these phases where crap's happening in life. You get depressed. Suddenly you're phoning it in. You're just showing up. You're throwing up the lights, and that's like the death, for us in a creative business. And so sometimes you have to go through this rejuvenation period, and you have to just sort of start throw everything out, start over again, and try to get back into that idea. And I think for me, that was rooted in the idea of continual improvement.
I think these are great answers, and you guys brought up a point that I want to touch on a little bit, and that is how technology has opened up some levels of efficiency and quickness and choices that didn't exist before. But I think the danger of that, and I say this being a manufacturer here, is that then there's also an external push to be faster, to work smaller, to have smaller budgets. How have you guys dealt with that in your careers? Have you managed, the push? As these lights become more efficient, you're able to do more with less, but that doesn't always translate into giving more creative freedom. It means get a lot less to do a lot more.
I find it's actually kind of the opposite, that we're actually using more lights, I find. And I think there was like a transition from sort of older school, the tungsten HMI, where there was a certain cost that you got used to that producers could handle, and our role is always to make it hurt just a little bit, and as we moved into LEDs, they were expensive. I mean, we were getting a lot for our buck, but they were expensive, and so for a while as owner operators, we had to sort of shoulder that cost. Until production got used to paying a little higher base. And so I find that I'm using more lights because things are faster. I may have lesser crew, but I'm not using fewer lights, and the budgets are going up. So are not going up. They haven't gone down, I don't think. Our cost of living has gone up, so maybe it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think it's a positive thing. I don't see it as a detriment necessarily, and I feel for those producers too that are being crunched on budgets. But there is just so many channels for content that, I mean, all these people, we're all working, at some level. And so that's a lot of content and a lot of work. So and a lot of lights. I don't know. I think it's positive.
I'm usually one person out on most jobs I do. I don't have an assistant. So for me, again, like Luke was saying, I actually own less, or I have less lights in my van than I used to have because they're multi-purpose now. Like we used to have a warm light and a cool light. For me, it's the speed. Batteries in lights has been such a game changer. Like I own 16 of the MCs, and they just end up all over the place. So I have more lights. I probably put more lights on set now than I ever did. But there's this weird crossover now where sometimes I'm working like an art department person or a set dresser putting accents in the set, which I never did that before because we never had anything that was small enough that we could do that with that wouldn't catch the set on fire. So I think I couldn't go back to the old ways. I like the technology we've got now. I don't think it's been a negative for me at all.
Okay. Yeah. No, these are fantastic answers, actually. So, all right, we're gonna start wrapping it up here. So, we're gonna give it a little bit more of open-ended. Let's have a little fun with this one. And I'd love to hear your dream scenario as a gaffer. You walk in, and you walk into this project, and the DP is, the challenges are, and what you get to bring to the table is.
I think the short answer for that is I want to enjoy the work of lighting as much as I enjoy lunch.
All right, my big dream is to have a week's worth of shoots, and on every day I've got a parking spot. That would just, that might blow my mind. I struggle with this question because it made me realize at first I thought I was content and I was being lazy by not having the aspiration to work with whoever cinematographer and whatever. Then I've come to realize that I'm actually in a happy place, and I love where I am. I love my job that I'm doing. I'm very fortunate and grateful that I can say that. Not everyone can say that, particularly when you're starting out. If you freaking hate being on set sometimes, you haven't found your people yet. You haven't found the people that you fit in with. Like I'm a corporate and commercial sector gaffer. I never started this job going, I want to light the best chicken burger product shot that anyone's ever done. Was not my inspiration, but I tell you what, there is reward. You find reward in doing stuff like that and everybody being happy, and I'm really content with where I am. And the only thing I'd change going back in life, I would take less photos of the equipment and more photos of the people. Because, man, we're getting towards the end. And that question, I think, is more for someone at the start going, I want to be like this person, I want to be like that. And I look back now, and my dream job would be if I could get to work with the people that taught me, get to work with that generation before me, if some of them were still alive, and show them what I can do now, what I've learned, what I've taken from them, the inspiration I got, and show them a full color gamut light. Can you imagine showing someone from 20 years ago, hey, watch what this light can do, and I'm doing it from my phone. I'm really content. I'm really happy where I am in life, and I don't aspire to be anywhere else. I just love what I'm doing. That's why I don't work at a shopping center.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree with Andrew. I mean, I like the mix that short form offers. I really like docs. I've tried to reduce my corporate to as little as possible. I think if I had a dream job, it would, I would like to do narrative. Narrative is difficult. There's a lot of work-life balance issues that come into play. If I could do a project and my wife was directing and we shot 8 hours a day and we didn't do any overnights and it was all naturalistic lighting and I could use a lot of CRLS and I could do some really interesting, beautiful work that nobody really noticed because it was all about the story, that would be my dream scenario. But I will say one thing. I have worked on documentaries for 25 years. I have never done one that wasn't super interesting and fascinating and memorable. I can't remember a corporate job or an industrial job I did last week. Who cares? So,
all right. Well, I'm going to leave you guys with one final question, and then maybe we'll take some questions from the audience here. This one I didn't put on the notes here. So, how has being influencers, right? John, you might not have a YouTube or an Instagram following, but you found the Gaffer Salon on Facebook. Has this affected your career? Has it changed the way you guys get jobs? Has it changed the way that DPs interact with you? How has fame changed you guys?
It's well, we should let Andrew talk to this, but I'll tell you just from I started Gaffer Salon because David Krupa had started Cinematography Salon, and I loved it, but it was only like 10% talk about lighting. And I woke up one morning and I thought, well, why don't we just do, Gaffer Salon? And I thought it would be 20 or 30 of my buds talking shop. And then 3 years later, it's like, oh my God, we've got almost 5,000 people from literally all over the world. I'm talking to people in Belgium and India. Manufacturers are reaching out. I mean, I didn't set this up for any of this, and it's been wonderful. And then, people like Maya have come in, Keaton have come in, and just a host of people from literally all over. I mean, I couldn't have dreamed of this when I was starting out. You could barely find information. There was a book or two you had to learn on set. Yeah,
for me, it's the best resource. Gaffer Salon's the best resource I've ever had in my whole career. Like, if I've got a problem, I can get an answer within about 10 minutes. From a manufacturer to there's 24 hours a day, there's a gaffer awake somewhere on this planet who's got way more experience than me. And I thank you, John, for setting up Gaffer Salon. I know it wasn't what you intended it to be, but it's easily the best resource I've ever had in my whole career.
Speaking of good resources, Andrew Lock.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think a lot of things change. One thing is you have to watch what you say. You become this sort of public voice, and it kind of hits you from behind, and it's a good thing, you become more PC, but for me now, I mean, I probably get 50% of my work is in direct relation to having this free-flowing resume on the web, and it's a wonderful way to get to know people from out of town who come to, shoot in our area. And it's also been a nice way for people ask me for names of gaffers in other cities. And I'm thinking oh, you know what? I can find that. And just that, Gaffer Salon does that. Just the community is really the beauty of it. I mean, the technology talking all about that, sure, we can do that for, till the cows come home, but the community is really the wonderful thing. And just like we're saying about our work, it's the people, and that's what you remember after all the dust has been, clear.
All right, I love these answers. So, wait, Andrew, you haven't done it. You'd sort of...
I'm confused by the whole thing. Because I set up Gaffer and Gear because my business was going under. I changed over to LED very early, and people didn't understand the technology. They were asking me for the stuff that I'd sold, and I was just doing little videos on my Facebook page saying, this is the new light I've got. Don't ask for that old thing. I've sold it. This thing does this. You don't need to put a gel on it. It's full color. And then people said, start a YouTube channel, dude. People will watch it. And I'm like, no one's ever going to watch this. It's boring as bad shit. No one cares about lighting. No one cares about any of this stuff. And I'm confused by it. I find it really weird that people care what I think. That's really, really bizarre. And the thing that strikes me the most is when I'm on set, I've got really bad memory of my actual damage. So I can't remember things too well. So people come up to me and they start talking to me, and I honestly don't know if I don't know them or I've forgotten them. And it's usually about the second sentence they go, oh, I love your YouTube channel, man. And I'm like, okay, good. I haven't forgotten who you are. It's just so random, the people that come up and talk to me. But you know what? I love it. It's a great conversation starter for me. So, because that's why we're in this industry, right? It's all the people around us. Why else would we do the shit hours? Why else would we have the inconsistent work? It's the people around us, right? And I just love that this thing has given me a way to... You got that young guy on set who's too scared to come up and talk to the older crew. Yeah, because they're shitting themselves, right? You don't want to look like an idiot in front of this older guy. They feel like they know me already, so they can come up and chat. And where it's worked really, really well is if we're on set and someone wants us to do something that's dangerous, or they're not thinking about it, the schedule's running late, and the younger crew members are concerned for their safety, they feel like they can come up to me and say it. And I'm happy to put it forwards. But they feel like they've got that connection. But you know what? This could all end tomorrow. Yeah. It could be some other platform or whatever else. Who knows? But I'm just, I'm still confused by it. I don't understand how it all happened. If I planned it, it would never have worked.
Well, I think the hilarious part of it is that here we are at Cine Gear, you know, in
on the other side of the world,
but in the middle of Hollywood, and we're like these low-level gaffers, you know, and people are standing around listening to us. It kind of boggles the mind.
Well, I will say that as someone who watches both of your channels, is that the amount of work that it takes to do what you guys do, day in and day out for these lights, it's huge amounts of work. And it is difficult to find sources that you trust as a filmmaker and as a professional to evaluate these things. So for you to not understand, I'll explain to you, it's a huge resource for us. So thank you for doing it.
Well, you know, when I first started the not salon, but the YouTube channel, Andrew said to me, or I picked it up from him, do not talk about anything you don't like. If you don't like it, do not review it, do not talk about it. And like that, and to me, that spoke volumes. Like, life is too short. Let's talk about these things we really like. Yes, that each light is going to have a pro and a con, but, you know, on average, on the whole, this is a useful tool. Maybe it's not for me, maybe it's not for you, but some, you know. And I just thought that was such great advice. And I've just tried to, everything, keep it positive, keep it interesting.
I want the negative one done. I want like negative gaffer. Just only talks about lights.
That would be that'll be the April Fool's Day, right?
All right, guys, does the audience have any questions? We want to open it up for you guys. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Yes, sir. Go ahead and talk loudly, and I'll repeat your question.
If industrial lighting improved.
Oh, yes.
How has the quality of industrial lighting improved, and how are you using them now on set?
Oh, yeah. You go back 10 years ago and you were working in a warehouse, you couldn't have used the lights that were in there. They were green as Kermit the Frog's underbelly. You couldn't, no way. But now, yeah, LEDs are getting really good. Even you go to a supermarket, they want their produce to look good. Like, I remember one time doing a shoot in a supermarket, pulling my spectrometer out. This was about 7 years ago, so I'm not talking about the current lights. And I took a reading, and it was better than my lights that I had. I was like, oh, shit, I should buy some of these things. So, yeah, you can. The quality's really, really good now on, you know, there's no mercury vapors anymore because they're too cost inefficient to run. LEDs really change the world of lighting, not just for us, but also out there. So, yeah, that makes it 100% doable. I forgot how much of a negativity that was. And also, with a lot of lights, you can go a little bit off speed with the cameras now. You know, you couldn't really do that back in fluorescent days or mercury vapor because they were working at the power frequency. Most domestic LEDs are running at about 300 hertz, so you don't get any visual flicker that can give you migraines or anything like that. So you can go a little bit off speed and things like that. And the big difference now, and this is probably a wasted point on a lot of young people, is you can see what you're shooting on screen. We couldn't see it. You know, on early days of video, it was a little black and white image. Film we couldn't see till 3 days later. We didn't realize the lights were strobing. So we'd be in a shopping centre. Australia has 3-phase power, and the lights we're working under would be okay. You'd pull your frequency meter out, great. But the next row across was on a different phase, and the row after that was on a different phase. So your background would be flickering or pulsing, and that seems to be a null and void problem with LED industrial lighting. The only thing I'd suggest is if you're going to shoot under industrial lighting, get your hand out and wave it around. Okay, and see if you've got motion blur, right? So if you don't have motion blur, that light is, I've got to get the words the right way around, it is a high decay, so it goes to black quick, and it's a low frequency, so it's not pulsing a lot. So the thing to bear in mind with that is, like, if you're doing a tracking shot, the tracking shot will look like it steps a little bit. So if you're ever in an environment and it looks like you got your camera shutter set wrong, it's the lighting. That's the only thing to watch out for, but that's becoming less and less of an issue now that the components are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
That's a great tip.
What's kind of fun sometimes is people in their homes are more cognizant of color temperature. And so sometimes you'll be in a house where they'll like, what temperature would you like? You know, and then that saves you a lot just in practicals. So, yeah, it can be nice. It's not ubiquitous, obviously. You can get into an environment where, you know, every other bulb is a different color. But, you know.
This is anecdotal, but this is about 4 years ago, I scouted a New York City courtroom, totally active courtroom, and I thought something was weird because I was looking at my director's shirt, and it wasn't the same color as we were just outside, and I went back and grabbed my Sekonic meter, and there was literally no R9, zero, no R9 at all in the spec, and I'm just like, you know, some of those old buildings you shoot in, and this has happened to me multiple times now, where the spectrum, you just cannot use it. Absolutely not. And I don't know how they live in that courtroom. The skin tones, everybody looks like they're dead.
One thing to point out, too, with downlights, I don't know if you have them here, like we're ceiling downlights. You see warm white, you see cool light, you see around 4,400 Kelvin. Here's a tip for you. The manufacturers don't make separate lights. It costs too much to make separate lights. They make the one light 9 times out of 10, and you can change the Kelvin on it. You can change warm white, cool white. So if you know how to take a downlight down, take it out and see if there's a setting. Because all the lights in my house, you can set from warm white to cool white. So that might be worth a look on a recce. Oh, we want it to be warm white, not cool white. Pop one down and see if it's got a changeover.
All right, any other questions we have right here, Red Shirt?
So then in NAB, John, during one of your talks, you talked about using almost goals, you know, to be like, were there any of those small tools that you guys sit down to really assess when at least having it in your head?
So the question was, you spoke about talking about the OptiSculpts before, and you wanted to know about other small tools you may have that you could recommend for lighting that you keep on your kit.
Opti is great, and they're giving away swatch books. I saw earlier at Roscoe. That's really interesting. I just keep a bunch of, you know, we think nowadays with LEDs we don't need gels, but like, you know, the Hampshire Frost, the half Hampshires, the 8 Hampshires, all that stuff, and some, you know, little reflector stuff. Like I noticed Dado just came out with this very small series of what do they call those things? E-Flect. I find E-Flect really fascinating. The little CRLS, very fascinating. You guys think anything else?
If let's say you're starting out, my advice is go to your hardware store and walk up and down every single aisle. You'll go, oh, that might come in handy. So, you know, particularly when you're starting out, you can't afford to buy the whatever brand. You know, it's amazing what you can find in a hardware store that you can use for lighting or to bounce or whatever. And it's always handy to have some scrap material around with you all the time. I carry in some black material for blacking stuff out, a bit of white for...
Yeah, mirror kits too. I have a DP that comes with like this deluxe mirror kit, all different, you know, sizes, some with like taped Cucaloris kind of breakups. I mean, those are super useful.
Magnets. Magnet mounts changed my world. That's the one thing I'd advise getting a couple of is magnets with a thread. Oh, it's amazing where you can put a light with a magnet.
I think the sort of greater point here is that, you know, we're here in the lighting booth, but the grippage is really what sets us apart from other people sometimes, because you can have a truck full of Aputure lights. You know, a lot of young folks have that, and that's what we should. And you should. That's wonderful. But if you can have the second half of your vehicle filled with grippage, you're going to be better off. And so learning how to be a good grip with negative and bounce and all that kind of stuff is key.
So my first mentor gave me some of his old tools, and one of my favorite things I ever had was an E26 adapter that had Edison plugs on it. So you could unscrew a light bulb, and then you had the ability to plug a light to it, and then still plug the light bulb through it because it was a pass-through. So it just gave you a little extra somewhere to plug something in.
I'll just point out there for anyone watching in Australia, that is illegal with the bayonet mounts because they can go in the incorrect polarity, which is why they're being phased out. So just don't buy those on eBay, but with the Edisons, yes.
North America advice only.
America got it right on that.
All right, do we have any other questions? All right, well.
You just underscore radios. You got
Don't.
So we have a film student. Yeah, moms don't let your kids grow up to be gaffers, I believe is the song. But we have a film student who wants to know what advice they might have for a student who's aspiring to become a gaffer.
I'll tell you, you are so lucky to be doing it right now because the amount of information, we were talking about this at breakfast, I think if someone sat down at a computer for 2 months and watched all these videos, you would be halfway there. There is so much information. The second thing is get yourself on set any way, shape, or form. Talk to the gaffer, talk to DP, a grip, whatever. Even if you're just there in an observational position, being on set day to day, watching other gaffer. That's how I think a lot of us learn is you watch other people doing what they do and you just start to pick that up and you start to really think. And initially, what happens is you're going by rote and you're like, okay, I know how to do this setup. I know 3-point lighting. I know this. But at a certain point, you really start to see the light and then it transforms your whole world. And you start to understand the tools, how to get the look that you want. So
I think if summarizing that one properly, it's by Aputure.
Don't.
Did I not say that? I thought I said
Don't work to formulas. Don't work to formulas. Don't copy what you saw someone else do if you don't understand why they did it. That's the big thing. I've had car shoots where it's a younger cinematographer and he's setting up all this gack and crap all around the car. And I'm looking at the car going, can we have a chat outside? I said, you're copying what you saw someone else do, didn't you? He goes, yep. And I go, you don't understand why they put that on the floor. But it looked great. I go, this car's a different shape. Yeah, it's a completely different shape. Don't get into the formulas of having ratios, hard ratios on everything, because even if you're just shooting someone, this is one my pet hate, is interviews where they go, oh, the interview's set up, you can go, take it easy for 12 hours. Every time someone new comes in, I look at it and change it a little bit because everyone's got different hair, different set eyes, different nose shape, different skin tone. So don't work to formulas. And particularly don't copy anyone if you don't understand why they've done it, and don't be afraid to ask why they're doing it that way. What's the worst case scenario? They tell you to piss off? Then they're an asshole that hasn't affected you. But they might give you an answer and you'll learn. Don't be afraid to ask. I was scared to ask. I was terrified to ask things. Don't be afraid to ask. What's the worst that happens? They tell you to go away.
By the way, tomorrow we're going to do a panel with these guys about what they don't teach you in film school. So if you come by tomorrow, you're going to get some more tips.
I think also, I just want to one more quick thing, is get yourself 5 or 6 lights, 2 lights, and you just start, go on Shot Deck, get a photo. Think about, okay, how do I duplicate this lighting setup? Is this a hard light? Is it a soft light? Is it sun? Is there reflection coming? When you start to try to break down something, how is it done? What does it need to be? What color is the light? I think even in your kitchen or your living room, just starting to work with light, try different things. The more you do, everything starts to click. Now, that doesn't teach you set protocol and all that stuff, but it helps you start thinking about, lighting.
One thing to keep in mind is that there are a lot of lights that aren't LEDs that are really cheap. So start there.
And also the other thing too is you're at a film school, right? So you know people at the film school. You've already got a base for starting a network. So don't necessarily look out, look around you and pay attention to what everybody in your class thinks you're good at, okay? Because that could be your thing that will get you out there. So you look local instead of thinking global and use that as a step, yeah.
And we will be talking about networking tomorrow in the art when they don't teach you at film school with these guys right here.
I was just going to say one more thing. At breakfast this morning, Luke said, we were talking about, who we work with. And I said, I work a lot with other gaffers. I hire other gaffers. And Luke was saying, yeah, you want to, the best thing you could do is hire people that are smarter than you, right? Or if not smarter, on the same level. So you're constantly being able to, up your game, get yourself out there. And so at a student level, that's just trying to see who's like a year or two ahead of you. See, who's got a little bit more knowledge than you do. And you just keep trying to surround yourself with people that are inspirational and that are willing to, share their knowledge. Because back in the day, people used to be, it's my secret sauce. These days I find people are so happy to share what they know.
And as Fred Rogers would say, look for the helpers.
Well, that's great. Well, guys, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful panel.
Thank you.
And let's give it up for these guys right here.